German tank crews believed their Panzer III and Panzer IV tanks could outmatch any Soviet armored vehicle. They were wrong. In early October 1941, outside Mtsensk, the 4th Panzer Division, S formation, came face-to-face with the T-34-76, fielded by the Soviet 4th Tank Brigade. The Germans expected weak construction, inferior optics, and poor crew training. In reality, their 50 and 75 shells ricocheted off the T-34's 45 sloped armor at engagement distances as close as 200 meters. German crews fired repeatedly, only to watch their rounds deflect harmlessly. During the initial engagement, 27 Panzer III and Panzer IV tanks advanced against 21 Soviet T-34-76s supported by KV-1s. The Panzer III's 50mm-42 main gun, previously effective against lightly armored targets, struggled to penetrate. Shells from the Panzer IV's short-barreled 75 howitzers lacked velocity and consistently failed against the T-34's glacis. By 1400 hours, German losses totaled 12 tanks destroyed or disabled, compared to only 5 Soviet tank losses. New tactical patterns emerged as German infantry reported panicked calls for flanking support to disable the Soviet vehicles. Unexpectedly, Soviet tank doctrine employed by Major Mikhail Katukov placed T-34s in ambush behind ridgelines and forest edges. The Germans, accustomed to rapid mechanized advances, now faced surprise counterattacks using terrain for maximum armored advantage. The supposed technical inferiority of the Red Army had concealed material and doctrinal advances. The battle at Mtsensk didn't just stall a column. It forced an immediate German reassessment rooted in the cold reality of their own ammunition ricocheting at point-blank range. October 6, 1941, 5:30 hours. General Heinz Guderian ordered the 4th Panzer Division to advance eastward along the Oryol-Mtsensk Highway, approximately 250 kilometers south of Moscow. The operational objective was to secure the town of Mtsensk and clear Soviet resistance at key road junctions. Guderian's division fielded 91 Panzer III tanks with 50mm-42 guns and 43 Panzer IV OSV tanks, equipped with short-barreled 75 kWK 37L-24 howitzers, supported by the 35th Infantry Regiment and 2 battalions of towed 37 Mpake 36 anti-tank guns. Facing them, Major Mikhail Katukov of the 4th Tank Brigade commanded 21 T-34-76 tanks equipped with 76 2M-34 guns, alongside 7 KV-1 heavy tanks mounting 76 2M S5 cannons. Katukov's units were entrenched in wooded terrain north and east of Mtsensk, exploiting ridgelines and tree lines for ambush. Soviet defensive positions included anti-tank ditches, 45 mm-1937 anti-tank guns, and concealed infantry, equipped with PTRD-41 anti-tank rifles. German command anticipated a swift armored breakthrough based on their previous successes against lighter models like the T-26 and BT-7. Intelligence assessments from September reported Red Army tank crews with minimal training and logistical deficiencies. The Germans believed their Pake 36s and Panzer IVs could defeat any armored opposition at standard ranges under 500 meters. However, neither Guderian nor divisional staff had accurate data on the T-34's 45 of sloped armor set at 60 degrees, or its wide 500 tracks granting superior mobility in the autumn mud. Captured Soviet prisoners on October 3 reported only light armor in Mtsensk, but this failed to reflect new tanker reinforcements underneath Major Katukov. Thick autumn fog limited visibility to 300 meters, while saturated ground and broken bridges forced tanks to detour through forest clearings. The terrain created confined engagement lanes measuring only 20 to 30 meters wide, inhibiting maneuver. What happened in the next 6 hours would determine whether German armored doctrine could overcome the unexpected Soviet defense. At 6:30 hours, the 4th Panzer Division began its advance toward Mtsensk. 2 companies from the 35th Tank Regiment, comprising 33 Panzer III tanks under Hauptmann Wilhelm Bayer, moved in line abreast with Panzer IVs in support. Each tank carried 60 rounds of armor-piercing and 80 rounds of high-explosive ammunition. The forested terrain north of Oryol was wet and deeply rutted, with ground mud measuring 30 centimeters deep. Soviet defensive position. Major Mikhail Katukov had positioned 11 T-34-76s behind a ridgeline near the Smirnovo Woods, with the remaining tanks placed further east near a collapsed bridge. Each T-34's 76-2 F-34 gun could penetrate 60 m of armor at 500 meters. Hidden Soviet anti-tank guns opened fire at 6:85 hours, disabling 4 German tanks at a distance of 250 meters and stopping the German lead elements. By 7:35 hours, German casualties reached 7 tanks destroyed and 2 immobilized. The armored advance had stalled within the first 600 meters of approach. Meanwhile, east of Mtsensk, Lieutenant Viktor Rudenko of the Soviet 4th Tank Brigade encountered transmission failures in 2 KV-1 tanks due to heavy mud, reducing their available heavy armor. The loss decreased their local firepower by 28%. At 8:10 hours, intelligence officer Oberleutnant Franz Mesler at 4th Panzer HQ intercepted a Soviet radio call reporting repositioned T-34s moving south. The message signaled a developing Soviet counterattack. Soviet radio operator Sergeant Pyotr Novikov at forward position reported multiple German tanks burning on the roadway. He was unaware that the Germans lacked effective anti-tank ammunition for close engagements. The weather remained foggy, with winds at 11 kph, temperature at 6 degrees C, and visibility under 350 meters, forcing German units to close distance to 200 meters for targeting. At 8:40 hours, 3 Panzer IV tanks attempted flanking fire against T-34s at 190 meters, but their 75 mm 24 shells failed to penetrate. General Guderian, faced with mounting losses and stalled progress, ordered artillery support based on the latest reports. By 9:30 hours, German armored strength in the sector had declined by 18%, leaving advancing units dangerously exposed. But at 9:45 hours, a concentrated Soviet counteroffensive began near the southern treeline that would prove decisive. At 9:47 hours, Hauptmann Dieter Kesselring of the 4th Panzer Division's 2nd Company reported a critical technical anomaly from his Panzer III command vehicle. Observing with his Zeiss TZF-5B sight, he witnessed 3 T-34s near the southern treeline survive over a dozen direct hits at ranges between 180 and 220 meters. Kesselring's loader confirmed that all rounds fired were PZGR 39 armor-piercing shells, which should, according to German manuals, penetrate up to 55 mm of flat homogeneous armor at 200 meters. Photolog sheets later showed 17 impacts on a single T-34's frontal arc, with no penetration achieved. 85 Kesselring's report was swiftly relayed by radio to Oberleutnant Franz Mesler at 4th Panzer HQ, prompting immediate concern. According to expectations based on the technical manual D-656-23, Panzer III units should have achieved full frontal penetrations at this distance against Soviet armor. The reality a complete lack of effect against sloped 45 mm T-34 glacis at 60 degrees contradicted field performance data. Within 7 minutes, Major Ernst Walther, the division's ordnance officer, was notified, and by 9:56 hours, a general warning had circulated to all tank commanders in the sector. 80 on the Allied side, Major Mikhail Katukov received a forward report from Lieutenant Pyotr Fedotov, indicating multiple German short-barreled shells striking T-34s without effect. This confirmed Katukov's briefings about the new tank's survivability. He immediately ordered his Western platoon to advance from cover and counterattack. Now certain German anti-tank guns could not stop them decisively. As a result, Katukov dispatched an additional 6 T-34s south across the ravine, with orders to exploit all exposed German flanks, while retaining 2 KV-1s in reserve for breakthrough operations. 85 Meanwhile, Oberfeldwebel Karl Dietrich, commanding a German Paquet 36 anti-tank gun section near Smirnovo, witnessed his crew's solid-shot AP shells ricochet from the oncoming T-34 turret at 215 meters. Lacking explanations or effective alternatives, Dietrich attempted firing at the tracks and lower glacis, but mud and sloped armor defeated each shot. Frustrated radio transmissions back to regimental HQ revealed a growing crisis. Anti-tank defenses could not halt the Soviet advance, and flanking support was urgently requested. 80 by 10:15 hours, reports from 4 Battalions Tank Regiment 35, 35th Infantry, Artillery Battalion 66, and 2 Paquet 36 platoons confirmed the pattern. No measure short of 105 artillery detachment seemed effective. Defensive lines began to fragment as heavy units fell back or shifted position, leaving a 1-3-kilometer gap now open to Soviet exploitation. Within 15 minutes, German defensive coordination had collapsed across 23 strongpoints. 72, the Panzer III OSV. J, fielded by the 4th Panzer Division, was designed to combat enemy armor at standard Central European ranges, typically 500 meters or less. Its 50 kW K38L-42 main gun could deliver an armor-piercing shell with a muzzle velocity of 685 ms, theoretically defeating 55 m flat armor at 200 meters with PZGR. 39 AP rounds. However, the 45 m glacis of the T-34, sloped at 60 degrees, increased effective armor thickness to nearly 90 m against German projectiles. This sloped configuration caused standard rounds to glance off rather than penetrate. 83 testing at the Kummersdorf Proving Grounds in 1938 to 1939 had not included armor profiles sloped beyond 30 degrees, nor the high-hardness steel used in contemporary Soviet tanks. The Panzer IV's 75 kW K37L-24 howitzer, meant for infantry support, achieved just 385 ms muzzle velocity, too low for reliable anti-armor effect beyond 100 m at steep angles. Additional technical failures included a lack of hollow charge ammunition in battalion stocks, Paquet 36 penetration of only 27 m at 300 meters, and fog-compromised optical ranging for all German gunners. 82 strategically, General Guderian's decision to order an armored breakthrough at Mtsensk on October 6, 1941, 5:30 hours, was based on Abteilung-Eich intelligence reports that underestimated Soviet armored presence and capability. Intelligence Bulletin 140, dated September 28, 1941, stated that Soviet medium tanks could be defeated by current Paquet 36 and 50 tank armaments at ranges below 500 meters. However, these reports failed to address the T-34's sloped armor geometry. Unknown to German command, due to incomplete field reports and prisoner interrogations that emphasized obsolete BT-7 models. In the June 1940 French campaign, German tanks faced mostly flat-plate armor between 25 and 45, which allowed the Panzer III to achieve up to 90% penetrations at 200 meters. In Mtsensk, sloped armor caused near-total deflection rates above 140 meters. 120, according to captured orders of the 8th Company, 4th Panzer Regiment, Bundesarchiv RH27-4/57, post-battle analysis detailed 43 direct non-penetrations in a single action. Oberst Rudolf Wehl's after-action report, dated October 8, 1941, specified, T-34 front plates resist all available 5 cm and 7, 5 cm tank weapons at combat range, requiring urgent issue of improved ammunition. Post-war interrogation of Hauptmann Kesselring corroborated this, noting 17 hits on one T-34 with 0 effect. Soviet archival analysis indicates that at Mtsensk, average German penetrations per hit was only 0. 7 versus 0. 61 at Dunkirk, an 89% reduction. War diary entries. BAMA N309/25 further document at least 72 German tank gun rounds that failed to defeat T-34 frontal armor during the battle. 110 Panzer Regiment 35 under Oberstleutnant Erich von Unger Sternberg immediately broke contact, and began a staged withdrawal at 10:25 hours. Within 40 minutes, the German forward strength in armor declined from 36 tanks combat-ready to only 19. 9 crews from the 2nd and 3rd companies abandoned their vehicles after mechanical failures and ammunition exhaustion, as tank shells proved frequently ineffective. This allowed Major Katukov, T-34s, to advance 17 kilometers along the southern sector, overrunning 3 regimental anti-tank positions previously regarded as secure lines. Artillery Battalion 66 was compelled to redirect all available 105 batteries from their original anti-personnel mission toward direct fire on Soviet tanks. 100 at Division HQ near Golovkovo, General Guderian received confirmed reports of the T-34's resistance at 10:47 hours. He ordered a rapid shift in tactics. All remaining anti-tank guns and mobile reserves were to be concentrated along the Smirnovo-Mtsensk road. Over 2,200 troops affected by this immediate redirection. The revised plan prioritized withdrawal from treeland kill zones and the urgent placement of mining teams on ravine routes likely to be used by pursuing Soviet armor. Oberleutnant Mesler was instructed to expedite ammunition resupply and redeploy flanking Paquet 36 platoons to broadside positions at no less than 150 meters from T-34 avenues of attack. Radio Order Graf 4, issued at 10:56 hours, formally recalled exposed reconnaissance units and reassigned 437 anti-tank guns from reserve to frontline positions. 102 by 11:30 hours, the German withdrawal was nearly 70 minutes ahead of the original schedule. Actual losses totaled 14 tanks destroyed plus 7 immobilized, far more than the pre-battle estimate of 6 tanks disabled in the opening phase. Casualty rate projections were exceeded by 48%, with the most severe losses attributed to ineffective anti-armor fire at close range. The delay at Mtsensk forced postponement of Operation Typhoon's advance by 36 hours, ultimately slowing the southern pincer movement toward Moscow. Post-war Soviet analysis credits the T-34's breakthrough for reducing expected German advance by 27 kilometers over 3 days. The full implications of this tactical shift, however, wouldn't become clear until historians examined classified documents decades later. 100 documents recovered in 1998 from the Russian Ministry of Defense archives revealed an uncensored diary entry by Sergeant Vasily Polypenko, 4th Tank Brigade. Polypenko described how his T-34 crew survived sustained German fire near Mtsensk. On October 6, 1941, he wrote, "Every round struck the armor with thunder, but none broke through. We felt invincible, yet terrified." Official Soviet accounts later contradicted this, claiming no T-34s were directly hit during the battle. The divergence arose due to wartime propaganda restrictions and the desire to present a flawless armor record. Only after post-Soviet declassification did historians access these frontline testimonies. Supply records from the German 35th Infantry Regiment logged on October 6, 1941, show a critical ammunition shortfall. Officially, each 37 Paquet 36 anti-tank crew was issued 50 armor-piercing rounds per engagement. Actual inventory, only 31 per gun, a 38% shortfall. Quartermaster Oberleutnant Helmut Kuhn reported the problem to Panzer Division HQ, but railway disruptions and road mud meant resupply was impossible during combat. This limitation forced gun crews to conserve fire, weakening the anti-tank screen and narrowing suppression sectors at decisive moments in the defense of Mtsensk. The October 8 after-action report from Panzer Regiment 35 claimed only 10 German tanks destroyed and 40 Soviet tanks knocked out in the week's fighting. However, Soviet Central Archive records from October 10 indicated just 9 T-34s and 3 KV-1s lost, while German losses tallied 22 tanks irrecoverable. Medical records from Regimental Aid Station 35 documented 76 German wounded for the day, a 40% increase over published divisional figures. Historian David Stahel's 2013 analysis, using German archival records and Soviet unit journals, exposed this gap, revising losses upward and changing perceptions about Red Army resilience at Mtsensk. While German command focused on concentrated armored thrusts, men in the muddy forests east of Smirnovo found doctrine breaking down. Private Yuri Kapustin, 4th Tank Brigade, encountered a washed-out bridge and, unable to cross with his T-34, linked logs with leftover steel cabling to create an improvised corduroy bridge. This tactic was repeated across at least 8 river and ravine crossings in the sector. Post-war interviews with 16 tank veterans confirmed widespread improvisation. Pre-war manuals stressed formal bridging equipment, but muddy isolation forced field crews to innovate, shaping Soviet tactical practice until formal doctrine caught up. Weather data from the German Meteorological Detachment for October 6, 1941, recorded a persistent fog at 6 degrees C, wind 11 kph, and field mud averaging 30 centimeters deep. German operational plans presumed firmer terrain and visibility up to 800 meters. Actual conditions missed, reducing view to 300 meters, and mud restricting movement-sapped vehicle speed by 35%. German tank cooling systems, rated for average autumn conditions, overheated after 2 hours at low speed in mud. This performance degradation, confirmed by Kummersdorf post-war testing, explained 4 mechanical breakdowns previously misattributed to enemy fire. Post-war analysis completed in 1950 by the Historical Division of the U.S. Army concluded the Mtsensk battle was a straightforward defeat for the Germans due to poor tactical reconnaissance and bad weather. General Heinz Guderian's 1951 memoirs claimed Soviet resistance succeeded primarily because of numerical surprise, not superior technology. The official Kriegswissenschaftliche Abteilung Chronicle, published 1957, asserted only routine technical challenges, listing 14 German tanks lost versus 37 Soviet. This interpretation dominated Western accounts for decades because Soviet and German archives remained closed and accounts from both sides were conditioned by censorship, limited prisoner interrogations, and missing technical data on Soviet armor design. Early studies depended on officer memoirs and incomplete Red Army reports. Declassification of German and Soviet archival collections in the 1990s radically revised this assessment. Historian Robert Forksik's 2014 investigation of Bundesarchiv and TS ammo files found battlefield evidence that German 5cm and 7.5cm tank guns rarely defeated T-34 frontal armor, even at close ranges, attested by Hauptmann-Kesselring's tank log, with 17 direct, non-penetrating hits. Soviet loss rolls confirmed only 12 tanks lost overall, with 27 German tanks destroyed or disabled, a casualty ratio nearly reversed from early claims. At Prokhorovka in 1943, level terrain and open fields allowed Tiger and Panther tanks to score kills at 1,000 meters. At Mtsensk, wooded ravines forced 200-meter engagement distances and nullified any German advantage, revealing just how crucial sloped armor and ambush tactics now were to Soviet defense. Recent research, including Alexei Isev's 2020 monograph and detailed casualty mapping using georeferenced wreck sites, suggests German irrecoverable tank losses were 38% higher than official wartime reports 22 instead of 16. Early Allied estimates claimed a 70% Soviet tank loss ratio, now revised to just over 30%. Isev and Forksik debate whether logistical or technical superiority drove the Soviet victory, citing German technical diaries versus Soviet tactical records. However, consensus from the Bundesarchiv's 2019 analysis, using cross-validated reports, finds that technical mismatch between German guns and T-34 armor was the pivotal factor. This historiographical debate continues to inform strategic studies of armored warfare on the Eastern Front, framing subsequent analyses of innovation and adaptation. Alexei Nikolaevich Okenev, senior lieutenant, 4th Tank Brigade, age 27, from Voronezh, was stationed near the Smirnovo Woods on October 6, 1941. Before the war, Okenev had trained as a mechanic and joined the Red Army in 1939. At 9:30 hours, Okonev's T-34 led a counterattack through fog and mud, approaching within 150 meters of German lines despite incoming rounds. In a 1972 oral history, he recalled, "Shells hammered the front, each one a drumbeat of death, but our tank pushed on." His push led to the destruction of 2 German anti-tank guns and saved the crews of 3 immobilized T-34s. Okonev suffered burns from a glancing hit and returned to tank command after 5 months in hospital. Interviewed in 1986 at age 72, he reflected, "Bravery was just necessity. No one wanted to die outside their home village." Okonev died in 1991 in Voronezh. His testimony is preserved in the Central Museum of the Armed Forces, Moscow. Jeffrey Hans-Eugen Pabst, 2nd Company, Panzer Regiment 35, experienced the events from the German perspective. Captured after his tank was disabled during the late morning withdrawal, his October 1941 interrogation revealed deep confusion among German crews. "We fired and fired, but the shells bounced. We couldn't believe our own weapons were failing." Post-war, Pabst returned to Saxony and wrote about his experience in 1965, later meeting Soviet veterans at a reconciliation event in 1980. His account matched Soviet descriptions of the fog and mud, but differed on how effective German anti-tank guns remained later in the day. Anna Ivanovna Semyonova, a civilian telephonist in Mtsensk, was caught in the crossfire as evacuations stalled during the Soviet counterattack. Semyonova took shelter in a school basement with over 50 townspeople. Medical registers note she was diagnosed with traumatic neurosis in 1942, typical of an estimated 18% of civilians exposed to heavy artillery. By 1953, she had recovered sufficiently to work for a local radio station. Her wartime recollections contributed to Soviet studies of civilian morale and led policymakers to improve air raid and evacuation protocols, influencing Red Army doctrine for urban defense in later battles. These individual experiences, when examined across dozens of recorded testimonies, provided vital insights into both tactical improvisation and the psychological dimension of armored conflict. Within the first 30 minutes following the German withdrawal order at 10:25 hours on October 6, 1941, 23 German strongpoints in the southern sector were abandoned or lost, and divisional armor strength fell from 36 to only 19 operational tanks. General Heinz Guderian, positioned at headquarters near Golovkovo, received fragmented reports confirming the T-34's resistance at 10:47 hours. In response, Guderian immediately issued Operational Directive 56, ordering the concentration of all available anti-tank resources, primarily 105 artillery batteries and Paquet 36 guns, along a 6-kilometer segment of the Smirnovo-Mtsensk road. Over 2,200 troops were redirected through Radio Order Grave 4, requiring urgent movement of supply vehicles carrying 4,800 rounds of high-explosive and armor-piercing ammunition away from exposed forest clearings. By 11:30 hours, the German withdrawal was completed approximately 70 minutes ahead of the original timetable, reflecting the impact of the T-34's breakthrough on German tactical planning and logistics. Within 72 hours, operational plans underwent significant revision. Operation Typhoon's southern pincer, originally scheduled to restart its advance toward Tula on October 7, was delayed by 36 hours, with all available divisional artillery reassigned to anti-armor roles. General Guderian adjusted his armored reserve deployment, assigning an additional 17 Panzer III tanks and 8 Paquet 38 anti-tank guns to fortify the Oryol-Mtsensk highway sector. However, this redistribution came at the expense of the parallel 167th Infantry Division, which was left short by 120 tons of ammunition and 12 fuel tankers for 3 days. Initial casualty projections for the sector had anticipated 12 destroyed vehicles and 90 wounded for this phase. Actual figures rose to 21 tank losses and 136 wounded, a 52% increase, attributable to the unexpected effectiveness of Soviet armor and shortened German engagement ranges. Fuel consumption exceeded expectations by 19% due to delays and rerouting. By November 5, 1941, the downstream consequences became evident in the broader Operation Typhoon campaign. The Soviet defense line at Mtsensk remained intact until October 11, 5 days beyond German planners' projections. This delay enabled Soviet engineers to fortify defensive positions east of Oryol, which in turn prevented German spearheads from encircling Tula as planned. The maintenance of the Mtsensk defense line until October 17 affected at least 4 subsequent German operational advances, forcing the 2nd Panzer Army to commit to additional probing attacks at bypassed positions, slowing the front's average daily advance from 12 kilometers to just under 8. Strategic doctrine within Panzer Group II shifted. Orders were issued October 20 to limit unsupported armored thrusts without confirmed anti-T-34 capabilities, and technical after-action reports formalized the need for higher-caliber weapons across all armored units. The war's timeline on the central Russian front was altered. Operations intended for November 1, including the planned assault on Tula and further movement toward Moscow, actually took place between November 7 and November 14, a delay of 10 to 13 days relative to original schedules. Soviet control endured over the Oryol-Mtsensk highway corridor, 60 kilometers by 28 kilometers, until mid-November, rather than falling to German forces in early October. As a result, 34 operational 105 guns and 5 battalions of reserves were freed by Soviet command for use in subsequent defenses. German planners, who had projected a clear route to Moscow by November 10, now faced a reinforced, entrenched resistance by that date. These operational shifts informed strategic decisions at the highest levels of command throughout the Battle of Moscow and altered Eastern Front planning for the remainder of 1941. Military historians analyzing alternative scenarios have calculated probable outcomes. If the German panzer and artillery units at Mtsensk had not encountered the T-34's resistant, sloped armor on October 6, 1941, or if General Guderian had retained freedom to push unimpeded through Soviet lines, major structural changes in the campaign would have resulted. The Allied timetable for the advance on Tula and then Moscow would have accelerated. Operation Typhoon could have commenced its renewed push on October 7 rather than October 10, an advancement of at least 3 days, if no technical impasse had occurred. Historian David Stahel's 2013 monograph projects that this shift could have placed German spearheads within the outskirts of Tula by October 12. Soviet defense planners, lacking the breathing space granted by the T-34's survivability, would have had insufficient time to reinforce their lines or construct anti-tank positions east of Oryol. Stahel's calculations show that an additional 400 to 700 combat and support casualties, Soviet and German, would have been likely over the subsequent 2 weeks had the Germans maintained their expected rate of advance through open terrain. Regarding territorial control, ISIV 2020 estimates that the Oryol-Mtsensk highway region would have remained under German occupation until at least November 15, prolonging Soviet exposure in the Oryol-Chala belt by up to 3 weeks. This estimation considers division supply rates, availability of engineering sappers for defenses, and the mobile reserve tank battalions kept west of the Oka River. Strategically, an uninterrupted German drive would have maintained Hitler's option to outflank Moscow earlier, potentially altering the allocation of Soviet reinforcements for the city's final defense. Comparing Mtsensk to other Eastern Front tank engagements. At Mtsensk, approximately 2,700 troops, 27 German tanks, and 21 Soviet T-34-76s engaged across a 22-kilometer front, resulting in a net German loss of 14 tanks in 1 day and stalling the Axis offensive for nearly a week. In contrast, the Battle of Brody, June 1941, involved over 3,500 tanks across 70 kilometers, but engagement occurred over 6 days, with Soviet losses at 80% and the front lines still collapsing. At Prokhorovka, July 1943, over 1,100 tanks clashed in open steppe, with a single-day loss rate of 184 Soviet and 52 German tanks. Mtsensk remains distinctive for the compressed timeframe and the thesis-shifting outcome. It is studied at officer colleges in Russia and Germany for its demonstration of the tactical effect of armor technology over sheer numbers. According to ISIV's 2020 comparative analysis, 42% of divisional-level operational delays in the 1941 to 1942 campaign can be traced to the immediate outcome at Mtsensk, while the Battle of Brody accounted for only 17%. Robert Forksick ranked Mtsensk fourth out of 9 decisive Eastern Front tank actions for its impact on operational timelines and technical doctrine. The academic consensus, now supported by declassified German and Russian documents, regards the Mtsensk engagement as a pivotal demonstration of tactical adaptation overcoming material inferiority. The Bundesarchiv's 2019 report asserts that the experience led to formal German acknowledgement of the T-34's superiority at combat distances, directly influencing urgent requests for the Panther tank program. Meanwhile, ISIV contends that logistics constraints were not decisive, with primary source diaries from both sides agreeing on the technical dominance of T-34 armor and the resulting overhaul of German anti-tank procedures. Declassified orders from the Russian Central Archives confirm that Soviet planners attributed the 5-day delay of German advance directly to the T-34's battlefield performance. With the causal chain documented in war diaries and after-action reports, the consensus holds that the battle's measurable impact allied timelines, personnel losses, and strategic options justify its ranking as a turning point at the operational and technical levels. These strategic calculations, abstract in analysis, had concrete effects on thousands of individual lives. Alexei Nikolaevich Okenev, senior lieutenant, commander in the 4th Tank Brigade at Mtsensk, returned to Voronezh in 1946 after service discharge. Post-war, Okenev became a civil engineer and spent 12 years supporting the Veterans Armored Corps Memorial Fund. In a 1972 oral history archived at the Central Museum of the Armed Forces, Moscow, he reflected, "When the gunfire stopped, my mind replayed every ricochet, every order reminders that survival was seldom in our control." Okenev kept in touch with 14 crew members, and his personal memoir is preserved at the Voronezh Regional Historical Museum. Okenev died in 1991, aged 77, in Voronezh. The Mtsensk Armored Battle Memorial, dedicated on October 6, 1971, in southern Mtsensk, features an original T-34-76 chassis atop a stone plinth, honoring those who held the line in October 1941. Annual commemorations on October 6 attract over 2,500 attendees, with special military delegations present for milestone anniversaries. The 60th anniversary in 2001 hosted former Soviet and German veterans. The Russian Frunze Military Academy employs the battle as a key case study in its armor and tactics course, teaching the operational value of terrain and technological adaptation. In 1967, Soviet armored doctrine formally integrated lessons learned at Mtsensk by instituting mandatory coverage of all defensive frontages by T-34 type armor or Betera procedural change, affecting 674 units over the next decade. The Russian State Archive maintains 212 declassified documents and 36 oral histories specific to the Mtsensk engagement. The battlefield innovations at Mtsensk influenced modern armored doctrine. The practice of hull-down ambush, demonstrated by Katukov's defense, directly shaped Red Army tactics at the Battle of Kursk in 1943. A Russian Ministry of Defense 2012 staff analysis connected the mechanics of T-34 sloped armor survivability to upgrades on the T-90A main battle tank. Mechanized bridging techniques, derived from crisis improvisations at Mtsensk, led to the development of the MTU-72 bridging vehicle, deployed in 1974, and remain a standard in modern Russian engineering units. The preserved battlefield site at Smirnovo